time for Global Insights, where we speak to experts from around the world on issues making headlines. Now, President-elect Yoon takes office in less than 2 weeks, and there are already winds of change taking place in South Korea's foreign policy. Saying Seoul and Washington's bilateral alliance would be the crux of his foreign policy, the incoming leader has set the tone for South Korea's diplomatic and security issues, including dealing with a nuclear north and managing South Korea's relationships in the Indo-Pacific region. Now we discuss what to expect here in the studio today. We have our Ambassador Kim Chang-beom, former South Korean ambassador to the EU and Indonesia, who served in the country's foreign service for more than 4 decades. A very warm welcome to you, Ambassador. Thanks for joining us.
Yes. It's great to be here, yes.
Yeah, lovely
wonderful
to see you.
Yes.
And of course, Professor Ramon Pacheco Pardo, who we connect to very regularly. So pleased to see you in Seoul today. He's the Professor and Head of International Relations at King's College London and author of a book that's coming out very soon, From Shrimp to Whale, South Korea from the Forgotten War to K-pop. So lovely to see you both today. And well, my first question to you, Ambassador Kim. Now, every time there's a government change here in South Korea, the question is, when it comes to foreign policy, how are we going to deal with Pyongyang, the nuclear north? So, well, over the past few years, we've seen various approaches to this. We've seen strategic patience, fire and fury, of course, and some bromance. So, all of these have seemed to fail. So, what would you say is the approach going forward for Seoul and Washington?
Well, this one of the most challenging issues ahead of the incoming new Yoon administration will be how to cope with growing threats from North Korea. When President Biden will be visiting Seoul, I think this later this month, next month in May, when meeting with President 윤석열 in Seoul, I think they will have to discuss how to build up a united front against North Korea's missile and nuclear provocations. I think there are 3 main aspects that we may have to consider. Is that one is how to take on Pyongyang from a position of strength. I think in the previous administration there are some criticisms about kind of the appeasement or the too much engagement approaches vis-a-vis North Korea. I think that should be rectified. That's the kind of the position that have been set up by President-elect Yoon. And the second one is how to augment and reinforce South Korea's deterrence capabilities vis-a-vis North Korea. I think we have seen this military parade just 2 days ago, and it's quite alarming. So how to cope with this increasing military capacity that will be threatening South Korea's security. And lastly, I think quite naturally how to kind of strengthen up the already quite rock-solid US-ROK alliance. I think that would be the key issues that would be on the horizon for both President Biden and President 윤석열.
I see. And Professor Pacheco Pardo, I wonder what your thoughts are on this. How should Seoul and Washington really approach North Korea in terms of denuclearization and diplomacy?
I agree that the starting point should be that the US alliance with the ROK helps South Korea to be in a stronger position vis-a-vis North Korea, of course, along with its own capabilities. So deterrence is key. I do think there should be an openness to dialogue, because at the end of the day, if this issue is going to resolve at any point in the future, there will have to be engagement with North Korea. But it seems to me that the incoming Yoon government is going to take a more principled approach. It's going to say, well, we're going to have a dialogue with North Korea if North Korea takes steps towards denuclearization, talks about human rights, and covers issues that are of key interest really for South Korea.
I see. And well, now Ambassador Kim, moving on to some other issues. Right. So South Korea is it's reached its lowest point of relations with Japan over the last few years due to historical issues and then a trade war triggered by Japan. But, well, Yoon, even before entering office, he sent over a delegation, though, to repair ties. But there are, of course, these historical and territorial issues lingering. So how do you think they're going to be able to work through them?
Well, during the campaign period, President-elect Yoon has been emphasizing the need to normalize ties with Japan. And luckily, I think this visiting delegation, high-level delegation sent by President-elect Yoon has met with Prime Minister Kishida of Japan yesterday. I think that's quite an encouraging sign as for the improvement of relations with Japan. But of course, there are some kind of the obstacles they have to overcome because there are some issues related with historical legacies and also the trade issues that how to kind of deal with this export restrictions imposed by the Japanese government on key materials. And also I think we need to have some patience in looking at kind of positive side of the whole improvement between Japan and Korea. I think there are some issues that might be giving both Korean and Japanese government to have some breathing spaces in order to have an elevated status of relations between the two countries. One is kind of Korea has decided to join CPTPP. That's trade and economic kind of framework that would be another good starting point for Japan to give some favorable approaches for Korea to join. And another one is that this Quad Plus. I think Korea is, new incoming government is showing some intention to join Quad Plus as a working group member. So that is another way for Korea and Japan to work together with. But of course, we have to overcome some of the issues that are already on the table.
And well, obviously, Washington's wanted this for a very long time. They wanted Seoul and Tokyo to get on and work in this trilateral alliance together in the region. And well, how do you see this trilateral alliance, really trilateral relationship, blooming? And how important will it be in the Indo-Pacific region?
Well, it's clearly that would be one of the hottest agenda that President-elect Yoon and President Biden of the United States will be discussing when they will have a meeting in May. This trilateral coordination and cooperation among three countries will be a key pillar for the United States to put forth their strategic kind of the direction, especially for the Indo-Pacific. And also for Korea's point of view, I think there's two-man ties with Japan are not only confined to the bilateral dimension, but also to the regional dimension, or perhaps to the global dimension, because there are so many issues that are already confronting both countries. So common challenges should be dealt with by both in a joint manner.
I see. And Professor Pacheco Pardo, now, South Korea has made it, well, Yoon has made it very clear that Seoul-Washington ties are going to be at the center of his foreign policy, and that's really going to set the tone for South Korea's relations with other countries as well. But when you look at his transition team, his top foreign policy advisors, officials, they seem to be mostly US experts. And is there a concern that, it might be, the issues might be too tilted towards Washington?
I think that it is clear that President-elect Yoon wants to use the alliance as a starting point for Korea to have stronger relations with the rest of the world, to cooperate with the rest of the world. I don't think it's much of a concern in the sense that we see more and more cooperation at the unilateral level with the US, Korea, and other partners. So Ambassador Kim just talked about the Quad Plus, for example. But if we see, for example, this tech alliance that is being formed among Korea, US, countries such as Taiwan, Europe as well, Japan. So the US is always there, Korea is always there. And I think that's his intention. I believe that the campaign team, well now the transition team, is looking into broadening the areas of expertise of the members that will be joining the foreign policy, the eventual foreign policy team. And for the time being, I think it makes sense to focus on the US-ROK alliance, because that's what President-elect Yoon has made very clear is going to be the basis of his foreign policy.
Right, and Professor Pacheco Pardo, now Yoon has made it clear that he wants to expand South Korea's diplomatic relations as well and strengthen them, diversify them as well. What about the European Union? How can South Korea and the EU really come together and really leverage both their strengths and work on common areas of interest?
Well, that's a topic Ambassador Kim and I, together with Ambassador McLeiter, exploring a new report that we have launched. And you actually see the interest on the European Union side to strengthen relations with Korea, because it's really one of the few partners outside of the West, so-called West, that has capabilities, same values, it's a democracy, market economy, etc., but can actually implement policies together with the European Union because it's a rich country, technologically advanced. So I think from the incoming Yoon government's perspective, working with Europe is going to be beneficial for two reasons. The first one, because Europe wants to cooperate with Korea, so there is an open door there. It doesn't have to try to convince Europe, the European Union, that cooperation is beneficial for both parties. But secondly, because the European Union can complement the strengths that Korea has. It's also a very strong economy, of course. It also has technological capabilities as well that Korea can benefit from. So I think that there are synergies between the two parties that the incoming Yoon administration can find very beneficial for its own foreign policy.
Right, and well, Ambassador Kim, how do you see this? How do you see South Korea really expanding its role in the world, and what do you hope to see it do? What kind of strengths can it leverage as it aims to be a pivotal player, as Yoon said in his article in Foreign Affairs?
Right. This Foreign Affairs article that has been released in February, I believe that President-elect Yoon has emphasized the need to step up for Korea. I mean, Korea is kind of the more responsible and more respected places in the international community. I think that's the right direction, but the question is how to translate those words into actions. I think there's one key area would be green and digital transition. Korea is also embarking on the Green Deal, and also they try to come up with more solutions for digital transformation. But that's something that we could work together with like-minded partners, whether it's United States, European Union, other even developing countries. We have to also augment our overseas development assistance. That's something that we have to give away, return back to those who are really in need. And another aspect is that we have to be really working together with like-minded partners, especially in these demanding times, in view of the crisis in Ukraine and all the challenges coming from US-China rivalries. Then we cannot stand alone. That's something that we have to work together with networks.
I see becoming more active and also vocal in world affairs. Right. And I'm also very curious to hear what you think, because this is, well, I think it alludes to what your book will be about. I'm just telling from the title, of course, since it's not released yet. But yeah, so can South Korea go from being a shrimp to a whale? What kind of role do you see it playing?
I think it can. I mean, I think there has been a transformation in the way Korea sees itself as a foreign policy actor in recent years, and I think President-elect Yoon really wants to take a step further in this direction. And I think that the point that you mentioned about Korea being more vocal, I think from a European perspective, that's something that sometimes is missing, right? Korea does many things, but sometimes it doesn't say what it is doing. Not MOFA, for example, not diplomats, but the government itself. And I think there will be an expectation that on issues such as dealing now with Russia's aggression on Ukraine, of course, the behavior of China, human rights issues, for example, violations, behavior in the South China Sea, that Korea will be more vocal, not necessarily by itself, but together with networks, as Ambassador Kim was saying, together with partners. This could be with partners in the US, Europe, but in the Indo-Pacific as well. And secondly, that when it comes to being more vocal, that they will follow through with actions. And Korea has really been stepping up over the past 2-3 administrations, I think, from a European perspective. But it is true that I can always do more. For example, ODA, development assistance. I think that clearly Korea could be doing more. But also when it comes to diplomacy, it could be convening, for example, more networks by itself or together with others, something that Korea has maybe not done as much as it could have. And Korea is very well perceived by other countries. It's a neutral, fairly neutral actor, even though it's like the alliance with the United States, but it is not trying to isolate other countries. And I think that's a good position to begin with in terms of trying to lead the networks either by itself or together with other countries.
I see. Well, I'm afraid this is all we have time for today, but thank you both so much for joining us here today. That was Ambassador Kim Chang-beom, former South Korean ambassador to the EU and Indonesia, and Ramon Pacheco Pardo, professor and head of international relations at King's College London. Thank you again so much for your time today.
Thank you.